if you don't know, I hope you're in the right room, but this is the one for to train and not to train, overcoming the challenges of teaching EAP at Sino-Foreign University. I'm Mitchell, if you guys don't know. I'm still kind of new here. It's like I haven't even finished my first semester, I guess, technically. But cool. So let's talk about this. So where was this? So firstly, like, where are we? This took place at Nottingham in Ningbo, UNNC, while I was doing my master's down there in TESOL. And then I looked at the EAP teachers in Sealy, which is their Center for English Language Education, pretty much just the ESL. That's what they call it down there. There, they run a preliminary year program for the students, for the year one students. So the first semester is EGAP and the second semester is ESAP. So a little bit different than here, where the students kind of take EAP classes for like the first year, second year, maybe even the third year. There, they just have only EAP stuff in the first year. And then they don't have math, they don't have science, they just do EAP classes. But still kind of, EAP, Sino-Foreign kind of place. And so while I was studying there and getting into the kind of field of EAP, like wanting to do that as my job, I really wanted to investigate the challenges that the EAP tutors at UNNC face and what helps them in surmounting those hurdles. Something what's challenging about teaching at Sino-Foreign University, what helps you overcome that, and also the perceptions of the value of formal trainings, teaching qualifications, both general in ELT, such as your Delta, your CELTA, and more EAP specific, like a PG cert in teaching EAP, and then learning on the job, communities of practice, that kind of thing. And then really, I wanted to get into the ideas of how can EAP teacher preparation be improved, okay? So let's start with like some characteristics of EAP. It's more high stakes, it's more intensive, it has more writing, it's less fun usually, it's more serious. It can be complex and problematic for people coming into it. Teachers may feel de-skilled, like if a general ELT teacher comes to EAP, they might feel a little bit de-skilled, and they may go through a shock factor. This is some stuff from previous literature that they've identified. Now, one of the big things, like we had earlier, the professor talked about, ESAP and EGAP stuff. One of the big things is do the EAP teachers need specialized knowledge of the students' fields? Like, do you need to be familiar with, business or engineering or stuff like that in order to help teach English for those majors? A lot of people say that you need to do it. You need to understand the structure of the students' fields to understand how language is used to represent that structure. Some people say that you need to be prepared to learn a layman's knowledge of the fields. Some people say that you should become trained in applied linguistics as well as a subject, engineering, business, whatever. Such knowledge is called a crucial tool by Sharpling. And then in Campion did a similar study to mine, but she did a study with EAP teachers at Nottingham in the UK. And all of her participants said that their greatest challenge when they started their careers into EAP was related to developing this specialized knowledge of these students' fields. But then on the other side, we have some people who say like, no, there's no real need to be an expert in the students' fields. Learning a layman's knowledge is not going to happen because it's going to take a very long time to do it. Instead, you should just be open-minded and interested in their fields, be positive towards the content, knowledgeable of the fundamental principles, and be aware of how much you know about it right now. And then really just let the learners bring the content and the tutors support them with the language. So it's kind of, some people say you should be an expert in this field. Some say, no, not really, just you should be open-minded and be willing to learn about it. Now, with the whole like EAP is very different, it's kind of broken off as its own kind of branch. Is there a need for teaching EAP training qualifications? The role of an EAP teacher is very complex. There seems to be no preparation really adequate for it. Bell, 2007, Bell was my advisor down in Nottingham, Ningbo. He's really into teaching EAP qualifications and training. And he says that, those kind of trainings that prepare teachers for EAP are very few and far between. This kind of goes along with showing that the professional education and training for EAP teachers lags behind the demand for them. So there's more demand for EAP teachers, but there's not training to match the demand. Now in Bell 2016, he said that in his participants, some felt that it would best have private sectors devise an EAP influence course, such as maybe like a Delta for specifically totally for EAP or something like that. And while other people in his study said that it should be left for the universities to figure out how they want to train their teachers. So then you see a difference of how should we go about doing these trainings. Now, so with that kind of in mind, I kind of started going to wondering what actually helps prepare teachers for EAP. So what makes you EAP ready? So we're gonna look at a couple things. One's formal on the job training. So, weekly meetings, your PD stuff. General EOT qualifications. So, you're maybe a master's in TESOL, CELTA, Delta. TEAP specific qualifications. So they are like there's a PG cert in teaching EAP. The University of Nottingham, the UK has a master's in teaching EAP. So not TESOL, but teaching EAP, exactly. There's also learning on the job, which is just you learn as you do it, you pick things up over time, maybe a community practice kind of thing, learning from others, as well as what I like to call the familiarity of the locality. So that's just being familiar with your local context. Who are your students? What kind of university are you in? What exactly are you teaching? Being familiar with all those kind of things. So let's break these down. So formal on the job trainings. So EAP teacher situations may not be improved with pre-service training, like stuff done before you start a job, because a large amount of local and specialized knowledge is required before you can operate effectively. And really that is better acquired through discussing with experienced colleagues and doing trainings that are on campus, at your institution versus maybe doing a CELTA or Delta, whatever in the UK and then going to work in Saudi Arabia. It's going to be a lot of local stuff is needed. So really learning a lot on the job. Now, half of Campion's interviews criticized inductions. So also this kind of formal on the job trainings are like inductions and stuff like that. But like inductions have been criticized for being kind of not really touching on teaching, but more of administrative stuff, how to use computers, as well as being too much detailed information too quickly. And Witt and Barquison, they did a study with English teachers in Chinese universities, and 35 of their 85 participants felt that professional development would help them overcome their difficulties they found teaching in China at Chinese universities. So here we see a demand for more trainings. Now let's talk about general EOT qualifications. Firstly, like the general ones don't really dive into EAP. We kind of know this already, though they kind of show that you have an ability of teaching, language, but they really can't claim to prepare you for EAP unless they have certain modules or courses specifically for that. Some interviewees in Bell 2016 felt that general kind of qualifications helped in acquiring the teaching fundamentals, classroom management, pacing, how to give feedback, how to do error correction, stuff like that. But then they also say that there's a considerable gap between what they provide and what EAP requires. Now, like some people are kind of in favor of there being a master's of teaching EAP, but then you have other people like Sharpling who thinks maybe it should be more of an option or a specialization for an existing kind of MA TESOL versus creating a whole new degree for it or having an MA in teaching EAP. And then some people have found out like really just having your master's or having gone through college yourself makes you familiar with academia, and that helps you with teaching students who are in academia. So now onto the teaching EAP specific ones. Bell really thinks that these are a very highly desirable thing. This is really his big thing that he really likes. And then we have Campion, who thinks that their role and status is somewhat unclear, still unclear. Her participants felt that the qualifications are insufficient without experience. They have limits, they're not essential, they can be dangerous to rely on. One participant said that if you're an experienced teacher, you can learn what you need to do without, you don't really have to have a qualification to show that you can do this. We also have other research, literature that says teachers may be hesitant about paying for a course before teaching EAP when that might not help them gain full-time employment right away, or may not help them get a higher position. This may instead just be seen as another expensive hurdle in a profession that's already really qualified driven. And really, in Campion, her interviewees felt that TAP qualifications were kind of inappropriate, would be inappropriate as a requirement, and maybe would be better if they were completed in sessional as one gazing experience. Okay. Now, learning on the job. So most EAP teachers appear to have gained their knowledge and skills through what Bell calls on-the-job apprenticeships, or a byproduct as a further studies. So instead of doing a postgraduate certificate and teaching EAP, they just learn on the job, essentially, which he thinks is not the most effective or efficient way to do it. But then we had a look at Campion 2016, and her participants felt informal learning activities were valuable. They mentioned stuff like picking things over time, learning by doing, looking things up, reading, having consultations with colleagues and subject specialists. And then Witt and Berhusen, they mentioned that opportunities to discuss issues with the peers or colleagues would be more beneficial for teachers than in-service training. So just having a kind of community around you to learn from. That, of course, is a community of practice in which people aid in making a job possible, creating a pleasant environment, they act as a resource to one another, providing perspectives and so on. In order for people to learn by experimentation, feedback and access to range of perspectives is needed. Now, familiarity of the locality, what is that? So really, I kind of started this kind of idea looking at Sharpling, who said that EAP's teachers' work cannot be neatly divorced from the academic and political context of where they are, okay? So the workplace is unstable, is unpredictable, and learning about it may not be teachable, best learned through experience and reflection. And really, this also lines up with different cultures valuing different learning behaviors. We see this in Harmer. Now, talking about, Nottingham is a British educational institute. So some students may struggle with, when transitioning to one of those kind of institutions, they may struggle with, being outspoken in class, guessing in class, thoughts on plagiarism, stuff like that, that I'm sure we've all kind of noticed. So this is nothing new. And then we look, here we are now in China. So we have we're influenced by Confucian ideas, and where they tend to value memorization and accuracy, especially if they go to a kind of a traditional Chinese school instead of maybe a private school or a national school or have studied abroad. Tends to be an emphasis on exams. That can lead to negative watchback. And then we also have with the whole different cultures, different languages, different kind of stuff like that. We ran into the contrastive rhetoric hypothesis, which is how writing styles differ across cultures, and that is influenced by linguistic and social and cultural factors. Okay, and then a teacher's response to a student's writing is likely to be impacted by that familiarity. So if you're more familiar or not with that writing style and the kind of way that students write, if you're more familiar with their background and stuff, that's going to influence like how you see it and how you interpret it, versus if you're not familiar with it. Cool. So with all that, so that's my literature review, and then I was able to interview 8 EAP teachers at Sealy down in Nottingham, Ningbo. Here's how I broke them down. 8 of them. One thing that you do notice if you look through here is that there's nobody from China. I was really upset about having nobody from, and they didn't have a Chinese national. And they have a range of experience. Some people only have 2 to 5 years of experience. I had one person has over 25 years of experience. Where have they taught before? Where have they taught ELT? When did they begin EAP? All that stuff, their qualifications. So pretty diverse group, and that's what I really wanted. But nobody from China. I really wish I had somebody from China. I did have someone from China, but then they decided to withdraw. Okay, so really I just asked them what is really challenging about teaching EAP at Nottingham and Ningbo. And no one felt that their greatest challenge was being unfamiliar with the students' fields. Nobody said that at first. Instead, it was aspects commonly associated with Chinese students. There's they're less willing to communicate in class. They're kind of hesitant. One teacher talked about when they first came and started teaching, they would ask a question to the class and nobody would talk, and they had no idea why that was, and it made them very frustrated. And they had to just learn that in China it's best to call on the individual student. Other people mentioned there's a pressure from parents, and then sometimes the students will pick a certain degree or certain major that they're not very interested in, but their parents think is very good for them, so they kind of lack that passion about it. Influence from the traditional Chinese education system. We have a quote from Emily that talks about, it tends to make the students maybe not very imaginative. And there's a concept of a standard answer, like there's one question, there's one answer, there's not, different possible answers. And trying to get students away from that to a standard answer. There's many ways to interpret stuff is kind of a challenge. Jim talked about how EAP specific, specific populations have specific problems due to their background. And then a lot of them talked about transitioning the students into a British education system, like what plagiarism is like, how to do writing and stuff like that. Differences between the languages and how essays are organized. And so if you look at the way Chinese tends to be written, the layout tends to be a more mystified way, whereas in English, we're very clear and very direct with our signposting, whereas Chinese writing tends to be more open for interpretation by the reader, usually, right? Now, some of the teachers had taught in the Middle East before, and they said that they had encountered kind of similar challenges when they had taught in the Middle East, like, the specific kind of challenges brought about by the students and the local context and stuff like that. And then when we came out to China, similar kind of stuff, but of course, different students, but still kind of the cultural background was an issue or something that need to adjust to. Some people have worked in China before joining Nottingham, or they also worked in South Korea, not North Korea. Oh my God, that would be fun. In South Korea, and of course, South Korea is different than China, but they are still kind of East Asian kind of group, and so they're kind of similar, more similar than the UK or the Middle East is, right? And so that kind of helped them with knowing what to expect from, East Asian students or Chinese students and how they are with their traditional kind of education systems and how they are in class. One participant said that they had no challenges at all with coming to Nottingham Ningbo because they had worked with Chinese students before in the UK, so in a British university, in a British institution, as well as had taught Chinese students in China. So they were familiar with Chinese students, they were familiar with the British system. So that helped them, and they had no challenges at all. That was just one person that said that. So then I was like, my first interview was kind of hinting at stuff with ESAP. And so it kind of divided into generally EAP overall, what's difficult with that. And then once you get into the student specific fields, like in the second semester at Nottingham, what's hard about that? And that of course is going to be the students' fields. So this is when they start saying that, oh, not being familiar with students' fields is a challenge when we're teaching ESAP classes. But that's not always a bad thing. And sometimes this can be helpful when you're not familiar with it, because then you have to research it a little bit yourself, and then you have to see how the students would go about figuring out that field. So then you yourself become a student, and that helps you get ideas how to scaffold stuff for the students. Now, in Campion, her participants considered that this was their largest problem when they moved into EAP, when they transitioned from general ELT into EAP. This was their biggest problem. But my participants considered their most pressing challenge when teaching ESAP classes, despite having taught EAP, ESAP for years. Some people had taught EAP for 25 years, and it was still a challenge for them, even though they've been teaching EAP for 25 years, for 10 years, for 15 years. It's still a challenge. So it appears that this is not, oh, it's hard at first, but then you get over it, it's fine. But no, it seems to be more of an ongoing hurdle that you don't get over, but it's more if you learn to manage it. Now, with the content, is the content really that difficult? It's so hard. Some felt that the content was never too in depth. We have Jay saying that as long as you prepared a couple of weeks in advance and you read through the materials, there's nothing that anybody in the department cannot deliver. Now, this stuff was only mentioned when I brought up ESAP, okay? Not when I asked about, what's challenging about teaching EAP in Nottingham. That was more about, the students, helping the students transition to a British university. But when I inquired to ESAP stuff, then they brought out the fields, the content and stuff. So then it shows that, knowledge of disciplines is only needed when teaching ESAP, which really does make sense. You only need to know about, engineering if you're teaching ESAP for engineering, right? But then I'm wondering, like, why does so much of the literature kind of push for, you need to be familiar with the students' fields when really you might not be teaching that. So I'm thinking maybe understanding the students' backgrounds, their linguistic, social, cultural backgrounds, and educational backgrounds and stuff might be more pressing, and helping them adapt to a new foreign institution, like a British style, right? So okay, so they say teaching ESAP is kind of difficult, the content is kind of difficult. Now, like, okay, do you think there should be training for that? Do you want more training for that? Most of them deemed it unnecessary. They were kind of unsure of how productive it would be. And then it's also kind of assumed that the tutors will learn how to teach the content on their own or through support from others. And also this will kind of cross the line between content and language. So we have a quote from Anna, who said that, there's kind of assumptions made from management, from the university and stuff, that you will train yourself and do some extra reading. You're expected to learn on your own without, having training and stuff with that. So that appears not only to support, several other previous literatures who believe that tutors need to devote time to researching the specific academic disciplines of their students, but also implies that doing so is expected of them by their institutions. So let's talk about general EOT qualifications. Now, most of them saying studying the MA level helps familiar with academia, prepares you to teach at the tertiary level, helps the teachers read introductory texts in different fields. The degrees push you to read intensely in various fields. One person who was working on a PhD thought that what helps you best for EEP is reading widely and reading a lot. Now, one person had degrees outside of EOT, and that helps them relate to the students. They're like, it's very helpful when it's something that's beyond ELT, when it's a different discipline. It kind of gives you more confidence in your own ability to write and read different forms of academic text, different genres and stuff. Delta was deemed useful. So asking about the Delta, they felt the Delta was useful. Most people mentioned it, but it does have its kind of limits. Some felt it to be essential to an EAP career. One person called it a building block to an EAP career. Delta, is more helpful for materials design, especially with what I'm doing now with Module 3 in Delta. And really, for Module 2, it's best if you do it in an EAP environment. If you're looking to be an EAP teacher, there's only one area where you can. So with Module 1, it's just general kind of stuff. Module 2 is your observed classes. That's best to do in an EAP environment. Module 3 is to design a course, and that's also best to do with the EAP kind of group of students. More stuff with that. Some felt that knowledge gained from experience was more valuable than that gained from MA studies. Like one teacher just had a BA for years and years and years, and had gotten 20 years of experience, and okay, now you have to have a master's. And so they went and did the master's, and they felt it wasn't very useful for them at all because they had years of experience, right? And most teachers had kind of gone back and forth between getting qualifications and gaining experience. Concerns were raised about being overly qualified without experience to go along with it. Most of them had kind of had done their careers by moving organically along, and when another requirement is required, then you get it, which they think is great. But then some people might be heavily trained before they gain experience, and that kind of led them to be a little bit concerned. And so this is what I think is kind of a double ladder, where you want to be balanced between your qualifications and your experience. And then some people, there's one teacher at Nottingham who I really do like, but they do have a PhD. They got their doctorate and stuff, but they did not ever do any kind of teaching at all. And then they were just thrown into EAP with no experience teaching at all. And they have lots of trouble of figuring that stuff out. And with their PhD, even though they had a PhD, they did not do Delta, they did not do CELTA. They just went BA, MA, PhD, and then got a job in EAP with no experience really to help them support them at first. And so that was a really big challenge for them. Cool. So talk about TEP specific stuff. Majority felt no desire to pursue them at all. We've gotten this far without these courses. Half of them kind of felt they might be beneficial for newcomers, maybe with teaching academic reading and writing, giving feedback, incorporating academic skills, critical thinking, learning autonomy. The only participant that I was able to find, that I was able to get, that had one of those, they had a PG cert in teaching EAP. I really, really wanted them because they have that. They felt they would help people gain employment. Now that kind of supports Bell, who feels like they could be desirable for people coming into the field. And then while my participants felt they can help people transition to EAP, that kind of contrasts Cambion, who's in her study, the qualifications score felt not to help with that. So then we see what my people say they can help, whereas Cambion says that they felt not to help. And then one of my people felt that consider familiarizing yourself with the local culture of the students will be more helpful and more useful than a teaching EAP specific qualification. So really they felt like more of the being familiar with the locality, like what I brought up earlier, would be more helpful. Now, formal job trainings, what do you think about inductions? Inductions were felt to be mostly for administrative stuff. Why? Time's limited. And then really Sealy and Nottingham, they feel like they hire experienced teachers and teachers are expected to handle themselves. Jim says that they don't hire backpackers, so they hire good people with a wide experience. Basic EAP, nobody really needs that, they don't think. Emily, who worked at a very top university, also in the Middle East, felt like inductions don't really focus on practice because by the time you get to the likes of Nottingham or where they worked in the Middle East, you're kind of expected to be able to handle the teaching stuff pretty well. Three of them mentioned including aspects of the local context. We have Sam saying that EAP is not a blanket. Understanding the institution, the learners, and the requirements is really important to help the teachers prepare for that. And so they really liked seeing that in their inductions. And that contrasts Sharpling. Sharpling said that inductions did not have time to focus on the local context. Now, contexts were made about inductions needing to be individualized for different teachers, such as adapting to teaching in China or adapting to teaching in British University. Anna felt like there would be different kinds of trainings for different kinds of people. Some people are liking just teaching in general experience, teaching English experience, teaching university experience, working with students who are university age. Maybe some people haven't worked in British styles before. Maybe some people haven't worked in China before. And really they gave their story of how when they first started, they didn't really have much experience working at British university. And so they really didn't know what was expected and how the British university worked and stuff like that. And they really would have liked to have some time, some couple of days during their induction to help them understand that. And really, Jim just summarizes it. Different people need different things. Some people just need more support getting used to China, like how things are in China, how the students are, stuff like that. So talk about in-sessional stuff. Each participant who mentioned in-sessional trainings felt them to be useful, sharing ideas, discussing materials with colleagues, majority of which were aspects of in-class teaching. Their various subgroups can be formed and stuff. So you have, like whole EGAP stuff, and the EGAP can be broken down into writing, reading, stuff like that. They have weekly meetings and they are teacher initiated. So kind of like what we have our COPs here. And a different teacher will do it every week through volunteers. So teacher initiated, teacher led, they take turns doing it. This might be what Wet and Berquist, their participants said that they wanted more of this kind of stuff. Now, informal learning opportunities. People mentioned observations, a couple people mentioned observations, which they felt were an appropriate way to receive ideas and feedback from others, especially helpful when they started working in Nottingham. Jay, when they first came, wasn't sure they were matching the right style for the British institution because Jay had worked in American university before, American style. And so they weren't sure about the British style, so they went and served a colleague and got talking with how things are with that. One interviewee felt that EAP teachers should observe content tutors instead of EAP teachers, so I'm focusing more on the content stuff, observing the lectures and seminars and stuff from content tutors instead of other EAP teachers. Lots of people mentioned discussion with colleagues, sharing ideas, getting feedback from students. There's a mentoring system at Nottingham where they put you with somebody who actually is in the same field as you. So like kind of like here, but like my mentor was with core for year 2, whereas I was year 1. There they tried to match it where you're teaching the same thing for the first at first. Of course, evidence of community practice was found, and support is found for the claim that consultation could be more helpful than in-service training. So really just a community practice seems to be very beneficial. So every participant gives support comments about learning on the job, researching fields, figuring things out over time, being reflective, consultation. Most participants said that this was the main way that they were able to overcome their difficulties that they found while teaching in Nottingham. Some felt that this is like learning on the job is how you learn how to teach EAP and do most jobs in general. We have these 3 quotes where they all say about the same thing. Like we have Jay saying, there's not much difference between any other job. You can get your Delta, you can get your Master's, but once you got those, the rest is on the job. And it kind of needs to be that because your context can change. Because you can be teaching one year you can be teaching ESAP for engineering, the next year you can be teaching ESAP for business. Maybe next year, instead of teaching at a British university in China, I'm teaching at an American university in Saudi Arabia. And so that can all change. And so I need to be able to learn on the job to do that. And maybe my Delta or my Master's in TESOL is only going to be able to help me with some stuff. It's not going to be able to help me with everything. What's going to help me with my specifics will be learning on the job, right? You need to continuously try to upgrade your skills. Learning, kind of never ends. Always trying to update yourself and upgrade yourself. New EAP teachers study the principles of EAP, what makes it different from general, and then everything else is just learning on the job. So maybe this is more than just a byproduct from Bill, who really did not like learning on the job. He likes the TAP qualification stuff. Sealy tutors may be a prime example of community practice. So really good community practice, it seems. They've organized themselves. They have a supportive environment. They have weekly professional development sessions, which are teacher-led. They have a mentoring system. Smaller groups will form on their own independently. Like there's like smaller groups for ESAP for business or science, and then the science groups will break down to chemistry, biology, environmental science on their own. The university doesn't make that happen. The teachers organize themselves. And then like with Campion felt that her participants needed like learning on the job because they were not getting enough training from the university. So she felt like that's they did it out of desperation from a lack of support. But looking at Nottingham seems like they kind of have an oasis of support that they've created themselves. So implementation, what can we do about this? So not only do EAP teachers need to be familiar with the field and how to teach it, but they should also take into account the backgrounds of the students, educational background, cultural background, linguistic background, and stuff like that, as well as their majors if you're teaching ESAP. Especially with the educational, cultural, and linguistical background, especially if you're doing a monocultural setting, like we are here. And that suggestion can be considered in classrooms around the world, of course. Now, the specialized knowledge of academic fields is really only needed when you're doing ESAP. In certain contexts, understanding other things, the educational background, stuff like that, cultural stuff is more beneficial. Maybe the idea of specific knowledge should also encompass awareness of the students' backgrounds, because that applies to ESAP and EGAP, right? And based on that, that's when the study becoming familiar with academic fields and students' backgrounds seems to rely on aspects of learning on the job. So pretty much any kind of challenge that was mentioned that the teachers had, how did they overcome it? Either they learn on the job, either on their own by doing self-research and stuff, or they learn from others by talking with colleagues or going to weekly meetings they have, or contacting content specialists. Yeah, like that. And that not only is that kind of how they do, it seems to be expected by the university. Inductions are not the best time for teacher development. They only last a few weeks, maybe only a few days. Many purpose prepare teachers for upcoming semester and administrative terms. However, it seems evident that institutions should attempt to offer trainings based on the needs of their teachers. such as those who like experience maybe a certain country or culture, such as China, a system of education, such as a British university, or just teaching EAP, or maybe just teaching in general. Some people don't have a lot of teaching experience in general. Qualifications have limitations. They may not be able to completely prepare EAP teachers for the challenges they will encounter. Doing so is probably going to be impossible from people with the same qualifications from different institutions. So really, like if I have my Delta from the UK with like one guy who I studied with, now he works in Saudi Arabia, an American university, now I work in China, a British university. Our contexts are very different. Our qualifications are only going to be able to do so much, right? So different locations with different students. Teachers can switch jobs, go from one culture to another, one field to another, ESOP for business, ESOP to engineering. So EAP is not a blanket and should not be attempted to be applied the same way in every context. And it should definitely take into account the specific student population. Institutional, formal, and training opportunities and opportunities on the job appear to be essential. They can be organized and adapted to fit the needs of the teachers, to their context, the institutions, the students. I kind of recommend that EAP departments should strive to, not only encourage self-conducted research, but also create opportunities and time for teachers to learn on the job. We kind of have that here with our Wednesdays. In community practice, teachers are able to learn from one another, their students. Great. So kind of like this, and this is pretty much like what we're doing here at Shipu. So in sessional meetings, maybe like weekly, materials, ideas, and stuff can be shared and discussed, can be divided into smaller courses, such as EGAP, can be broken down to stuff about maybe doing oral presentations. You have different ESOP stuff like engineering, business, whatever. Cover areas of general importance related to that, and it's of course several teachers at once. And then a mentoring program for maybe new incoming teachers and stuff like that. 101, a senior tutor advises a new tutor, personal support for specific needs, just like anything like that. I would like for this to be more, if I was able to do everything, I would like for this to be more of a senior tutor who teaches the same classes or the same thing, such as core, as the new teacher. Like I didn't have that. I thought that would be maybe a little bit more helpful. So, learning to teach EAP is a long-term process. This is also found in Campion. Great. So in this supportive community practice, such as learning a job may no longer be a last resort due to lack of training, like what we saw in Campion, like Campion mentioned. It may instead become an institutional advantage, and it can be adapted to teachers as their needs develop, focus on new challenges as they appear. Great, cool. Now, so that's the end of my master's dissertation. Now we're gonna look at the next chapter, which is actually very short. Very bad, that's kind of short. So what am I working on now with this? So I'm in the process now of applying for a PhD. I'm working on my proposal now. I'm waiting for more feedback about my proposal. I'm trying to do my PhD in English here at Shipu. So what am I trying to do with my PhD? Well, I want to explore the challenges of EAP instructors at Sino-Foreign universities and how COPs help manage them, okay? So what's challenging about teaching at Sino-Foreign university, and how does your COP help you with that? Or maybe stuff like suggestions to help them develop more and stuff like that. I might take this out because this is kind of leading. Like, oh, what helps you, COP helps me. That's kind of leading. I might take that. Anyway, that's kind of one idea. Exploring the challenges of EAP teachers at Sino-Foreign universities. Now, how am I going to do that? The plan right now, my main idea right now is to survey maybe 50 to 100 teachers to identify the obstacles. So really like what challenges, so a survey for 50 to 100 teachers, asking them about the challenges of teaching EAP at Sino-Foreign universities. And then after that, after I identify the more common kind of challenges and stuff, then I want to interview 20 to 30 people to explore how COPs help, don't help, why, stuff like that. Now, where do I want to do this? I want to try and do it with 5 Sino-Foreign universities. So my master's was just at Nottingham, Ningbo, only have there. Here, I want to expand into different Sino-Foreign universities. So like here at Shipu, Nottingham, Ningbo, Duke Kunshan, there's Ken and Wenzhou, and then there's NYU in Shanghai. There's like thousands, I think if not, maybe just hundreds, but hundreds or thousands of Sino-Foreign kind of schools or ventures inside bigger universities. Like, you see like John Hopkins in Nanjing, as part of Nanjing University, I think. And then at Shanghai University, there's Sydney, the University of Technology Sydney has a business school with Shanghai University. But that's just like a department or maybe a school inside a university. So I really just wanted full-fledged university. So British style, American style, stuff like that, American style there. And really want to look at those, the full out Sino-Foreign university versus like co-department stuff. Now, who do I want? I want tutors of various experience, EAP experience, general ELT experience in China, other places, various qualifications, EAP ones, general ones, maybe some people with doctorates, I really would like that. And then different nationalities, which I have broken down to 3 circles, which are, inner, outer, and expanding, which is pretty much like the US, UK are inside, expanding would be like, India, and then outer would be, China, Japan, stuff like that. I really want Chinese nationals because I didn't have any for my master's, and really like the main thing was like, oh, the Chinese students, helping them and stuff. But then I think the Chinese nationals would be, they're Chinese themselves, so they understand where the students are coming from better. So I really want to explore that some. Now, why do I want to do this? To not only show that EAP is unique to its factors, who's being taught where, and what kind of institution, who's doing the teaching. EAP is really, not a blanket, it's very unique to its context. And also I want to provide guidance for future EAP teacher development and PD and professional development, stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of like what I want to do. I'm still in the proposal and application stage. So yeah, still working on that now. Yeah, if you guys see some email from me, this is what that's about. All right, cool, you guys, and I'm done. Sweet, that did not take very long at all. Do y'all have any questions or anything? And everybody's quiet.
Hi, Mitchell.
Hi.
Emer here.
Hi, Emer, how are you?
So yeah, I've been teaching EAP for about 25 years,
yes,
mostly at tertiary. And yeah, I've done the Middle East, I've done Europe, and been here for 8 years. So you are teaching in core last semester?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so would you describe that as EAP?
Yes, ma'am, because it's focused on their academic skills, though not totally, but it is trying to, like with core, they do like very basic stuff. So they do read kind of academic text. I would consider it, it's kind of like, it's kind of a mix because it has the different fields with like, bioengineering and zoology and stuff. So it kind of goes to the ESAP, but then it's more of a general thing with helping them prepare like speaking stuff for that, and then also doing their writing. So really, barely, I guess. I like the first year classes at Shanghai University where I was last year more because in the first term at Shanghai University, the first year students write a full 5-paragraph essay with citations and everything, and so that's very academic. Here it seems like we kind of start very, very little and help them get up.
So would you think it's more EFL, ESAP? I mean, what do you, as a new member of staff, do you think we have a clear articulation of what EAP means to the language center? Because I feel we've never really articulated what our approach to teaching EAP is. And that might help new staff and current staff.
Yeah, well, we're doing, so like let's look at our listening stuff. The students listen to is usually like lectures, excerpts from lectures and stuff, and that's going to help them with their academic skills with listening to lectures when they hopefully get into their specific fields and stuff like that, with the basics of writing, how to organize a paragraph, versus general like ELT would be more like writing a postcard or writing a letter to your friend, maybe listening to some friends talk about what they did over the weekend. Here's more specific stuff that we see in academia.
But we don't require them to use any sources. Do you think that's an issue?
I
That
would
their
like,
first introduction to EAP writing is still asking them to use ideas from their own head, so to speak.
I would like to do more with citations, but I don't make the classes here. I would like to have more citations and stuff. Like some of my students ask about making a reference list because they've studied abroad. And so they've, like one guy is studying in San Francisco, and in his university, he studied in his school, they had him make a reference list and stuff like that. And they're like, we're not doing that this term because we're doing it very simple right now. I want to say this is because a lot of our students may be at lower levels, and some of the students are really struggling with just how to make a simple essay, how to make a simple paragraph. And then once they get that done very, very well, then I think next term, right, we break into the doing referencing and stuff.
Yeah, I suppose that's based on a lot of assumptions. We're saying that they can't do it, but I'm the same. I had a lot of students who are well aware of how to write an essay. Even in Chinese, they know how to write an essay. There might be a different approach to it, but if you ask a student to write a paragraph that doesn't actually exist in an academic setting, who would write advantages, disadvantages in one paragraph? In a way, they're asked to write a mini condensed essay in a paragraph format, which isn't realistic. So we create a difficult task that they can't achieve.
Yes, ma'am. Like where I was last year at Shanghai University, the Silk Business School, like they would spend their whole first term, like 10 weeks, we have 10 weeks, we have trimesters. And they would write one kind of paragraph about advantages of something, another paragraph about disadvantages about something, and then those would be the body of a essay for them with references and everything like that. Here it seems to be more of, right, this kind of paragraph, advantages, disadvantages of something related to zoology, and then, compare and contrast something related to, I don't know, bioengineering, bioethics. So here, I would like to be more academic, more referencing, more writing an essay right away. But then like some students are struggling with some stuff. Yeah, some students are struggling a lot with just writing one paragraph. Some students have no problem at all with it, and they can totally write 5-paragraph essays right now. But yeah, I think, yeah, like
Do you think do you think they were overassessed? Because one of your points you made is that coming from a Chinese educational model, it's based on assessment, and achieving in assessments. I mean, in some ways, we haven't changed that because of the focus on the assessments. We're just continuing that approach.
right.
We're actually telling them product is more important than process.
Like so with the Chinese, the way Chinese systems really work at the schools, a lot of the public schools, all they really focus on is the Gaokao from the very beginning, and that's most of it is multiple choice. There's a little bit of writing. They're starting to make listening onto it. Some places are doing listening now, but there's no speaking parts on the Gaokao for English. So it's very exam based. Here, the British universities tend to like assessments. This is why like the grades are only, one writing thing, maybe one speaking thing, and then you have a midterm and a final test that have writing parts. Whereas I like the American system where we can do more summative stuff. So like in my American universities, and whenever I make my own classes, I like to give a percentage of the grades for how they do with their homework, how they do in their class, do they actually like participate in class, do they actually do their classwork, and how does that look? Do they do their homework and give them grades for that? Versus here's the British universities tend to be more focused on assessments. Like when I do my stuff, when I studied down in Nottingham, Ningbo, there was like, oh, there's no homework. It's just at the end of the course, write a 5,000 word paper, and that's it. That's the whole grade. I'm like, what? There's nothing else? No homework? No come to class grade? No, nothing? Like I don't know if I have to go to class, I can just write a paper and then I pass. So that's a little bit different for me from my American system that I grew up in.
So just informally, which did you prefer, or which do you think might be better? Which approach?
I like the American system just because it gives them more reason to work towards the final and stuff, versus the British system seems very in the course there's 5 assessments or 3 assessments and that's it. and the US system kind of like, I know some people have complained about students not doing homework, not studying, not participating much in class and stuff like that. And then really that seems to be more of a British problem, I guess, with the British universities that I've been in, because the American system actually gives points for that. So I know I heard Kat who does the CS, like she has some students, she tried to have some students do recordings of them practicing their English. And then she said that none of her students ever did it, because, and then maybe some students would do it at first, and towards the end of the semester, nobody wanted to do it because they didn't want to practice speaking stuff. And she's like, I don't know why this happened. I'm really like, it's because you didn't make it for a grade. If you don't make things for a grade, I'm not gonna do stuff. Even me now, like if it's not for a grade, like in Nottingham, some of the professors tried to give us homework where we do like reflective stuff, but it wasn't for a grade. And if it's not for a grade, I'm not gonna do it. And then this is me thinking that, and then really the students are mostly gonna be that way. And so
okay, really, thank you, Mitchell. In case anyone else has a question, I'm looking at the time here too. Thank you.
No problem, thank you. Thanks, Alan. I see your message. Yeah, because like some people, like I've only seen my first, some students I only see for like the first like 3 weeks of class, and they have not seen them since. And then yeah, like, and then like at Shanghai University, you have to have 80% attendance in the class in order to take the final test. Here is kind of, I think the key things like you have to attend 80% of the class, or it may affect you somehow, but it's not very clear. At least that's what I've heard about how things are here. But yeah, still, I think, you know, homework stuff. Yeah, dude, remember how you were when you were 18? I'm still immature. I'm 20, I'm 28 now. Good Lord. Like even if you ask me, oh, do this homework, is it for a grade? If it's not for a grade, then sorry, I'm not gonna be interested. Though, yeah, we want them to do that. It helps them develop, but really, they're kids. I'm still a kid. Yeah, I think if everything should be for a grade, somehow. Cool. Anybody else? What do you guys got for me? Because yeah, I think it's about time for the next one, ain't it? We have a couple of minutes to the next one. Cool. Thanks, Emmer. Thanks, Hong Kong. Thank y'all, thank y'all, thank y'all. Cool. Oh yes, let me go ahead and get it out of here, because then there's another person coming into this one actually, like Dora is gonna come into this room. So let me get it out here for her to come in. Cool, see you guys, thank y'all. If you guys have any more questions, I'll be around today for lunch. I'm easy to see. Easily noticeable for sure. Cool, let me get out here, stop share. All right, Ting Joe, I think we're okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, let's send that message. Cool. Bye, y'all.